over here in the studio, and we've got a discussion going on about Jon Jones. What's a bigger fight? Here's how this whole thing started. What is a bigger fight? Jon Jones versus Ngannou, or is it Jon Jones versus Stipe? Now, I didn't even pause, and I said it's Jones versus Ngannou, but then I was confronted. People said, well, why? Oh, so it's the greatest storyline in the history of the UFC. Not only is Jones versus Ngannou, this is my stance, not only is Jones versus Ngannou a bigger fight than Jones versus Stipe, it is the biggest fight in the history of the organization because of the storylines. So then I got this pushed back on me. I said, all right, Jon Jones does not sell well. Stipe Ngannou does not sell well. So you're putting two negatives together and you're trying to come out with a positive. Where else in sport or life has that been done? If I was to take a baseball team that couldn't sell out, but I went and found another baseball team that couldn't sell out, and I told you we're going to put them together and that's going to be monster ticket sales, you're going to say, how did you come to that conclusion? Or if I take a really good actor and another really good actor, but their box offices are notoriously flat, but I'm going to put them in a picture and I'm going to do it together, and that's going to be a blockbuster hit. How are you getting to that conclusion? Now, I'm not willing to back down. I'm standing by Jones and Ngannou, but answering the why is a little bit harder. One thing that a Jon Jones fight has not had in a meaningful amount of time is any kind of reasonable belief by the audience that Jones might lose. And I realize he's had some close ones, but those were a surprise. We did not know it ahead of time. We did not expect it ahead of time. One reason that Jones and Gustafsson Part 2 did so well is because Gus showed us he can beat him. And I only bring that to you. I feel like I'm stating the obvious and I'm repeating what's already been said. But that's one element that a great big scary Francis Ngannou brings to it. Now, I was pushed back on after Francis's last fight. Do you really think he's going to go out there and flatten Jon Jones? He's now advertised that he's having knee surgery. Jon Jones comes out with those straight oblique kicks. It's going to be a really bad day. Jones is going to drag him down to the canvas one time. Jones goes home world champion. I'm going, well, that could be what happens. But I'm not here to speak about the X's and O's. That's a different conversation. Just perception to the world. If Jones versus Ngannou got announced today, I would expect when I go to DraftKings to look at the odds that Jones, for the first time in history, is an underdog. Am I wrong about that? Because if I'm wrong about that, then my entire premise is out. If Jones is expected, and that's how we'll base that, how we'll judge it. We'll just go look at the line. If Jones is expected to win, then everything that I just proclaimed and the reasons that I proclaimed for this to be such a massive night of business, they'll be right out the window. So here I'm kind of here to ask you guys. I'm kind of bringing you in on the conversation. What do you want to see more? Jones versus Stipe? Jones versus Ngannou? What do you want to see more? And I realize there's a third one there, and I'm not trying to be rude about Stipe versus Ngannou. I'm just setting that aside because you've already seen it not once but twice. I'm very confident in telling you, you will see it a third time. You go to a trilogy match. As long as one of them has the belt, they'll find their way to each other. And there seems to be a delay. There seems to be a delay in Jones versus Stipe. And Michael Bisping wasn't breaking news a week ago. He was just spitballing ideas. But the idea was, don't make Stipe versus Jones. Keep Jones as long as you have to and just bring him in against Francis. That was Bisping's booking. That was his matchmaking. But as time goes on, as time goes by, it is going to look as though Bisping softened a blow, foreshadowed, prepared all of us. That's how it's going to look. Because as each day goes by, why don't we just do that? We're in no rush to do Stipe versus Jones right now. So if we're not in a hurry to do it today or tomorrow or the next day, how about we just don't do it at all? How about we wait and see if Francis is going to come back, and if he comes back, who we're going to put him in there with, and let's keep our powder dry. Because one thing that happens if you're looking for opponents for Francis, if you put Stipe and Jones together, You didn't just create Francis's next opponent, you eliminated a top contender. And as more time goes by and the more I'm really forced to look at this, trying to guess and judge, do my little detective work, what's going to happen over there, what decisions are going to be made at the UFC, I do have to come back to what Michael Bisping said, which is that it might just be the wisest thing. Keep Jones dry, keep him on the sidelines, bring him in against Francis, when and if that fight can even happen. And what the delay is with Stipe and Jones does appear to be a little bit tactical. I mean, imagine a scenario, right? We know that we got this contract thing going on with Francis. Let's say that date comes and goes and Francis is now no longer in the conversation. Now do we jump? Now do we rush? Now are we in a hurry to get Jones and Stipe together? Or is it still in the same spot of, something opens up, we'll give you a call? Interesting question. Jones versus Ngannou, for me, I believe, be the biggest fight in history. I believe it has the ultimate storyline. But I will concede back to you, right now, the greatest storyline in heavyweight history was Ciryl Gane versus Francis Ngannou, and you guys did not buy that. You did not want to see it. Surprised me. So can you take two negatives and get a positive? And if so, how? That's the question I was just confronted with. I just got asked this. I did my best to answer it. I'm staying with it. But I will admit, not all of my logic makes perfect sense.